Welcome to the Animal Tone podcast. It's really lovely to have you here, Steve. That's really helpful. Okay, so pathogen, host, and environment, and of course the relationships between these, and I guess the power dynamics that allow for them to impact some lives more than others. And I think that brings me back to the original kind of question I wanted to ask you is, one, it's obvious to me, it seems to me that we're not just talking about disease here, that the second you start to talk about disease, you're talking about many other kind of security questions. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then two, it seems to me that the obvious question is whose life? So when you're saying making life safe, whose life are we actually talking about when we make these kind of biosecurity claims?
Yeah, so good question. So security more generally, I mean, that opens up a massive question of what security is. And I think there's both good and bad things here, if I can do this simply, but do come back to me. So biosecurity is not biodefense, yet it's often thought about as a defense. So how can we defend ourselves against pathogens coming from over there, right? And there's a whole national thing here, isn't there, about, stopping immigrants bringing in certain diseases. TB would be a good example of that. Stopping, the import of food with foot and mouth in it from non-foot and mouth free nations. So foot and mouth disease, wonderful one to think about in terms of global geopolitics, because some countries are foot and mouth free and they can freely trade meat between them. Others aren't, and you can't move meat from one to the other, for example. So, but I would say that's defense, right? I know my enemy. I know I don't like that virus. I want to keep it over there. So it's a little bit like a sort of conventional friend enemy. We're all friends here. The enemy's over there. We'll stop them coming this way. That's the logic. Security is really quite different, isn't it? Security is about the regulation of movement. So it's not knowing who your enemy is. It's about, so security is something you probably go through at the airport or into a sports stadium, right? The last thing they'd want to do is keep you out because they wouldn't have any money. But they then check everything about you, right? They probably profile you racially. They look in your bag and all that kind of thing. So that's about, if you like, regulating movement, all right? Measuring. It's about working out whether or not you're a safe passenger or not. That's what security is in many senses. So biosecurity is increasingly perhaps also becoming this way of making life safe in order that it can move and be traded. And this is about big money now. So we're thinking about not only declaring nations foot and mouth free, but also working out who are the nations we can trade with and so on, and movement of goods, people, and so on. So that's one element of it. The second question you just asked is about, and I think that does make it more complicated and quite interesting. There's a lot to say, and a lot of good geography has been thinking about this shift from defense to security, because security is never as, defense is quite easy, isn't it? And it's easy to imagine, I've stopped all movement, therefore I've stopped the enemy coming in, therefore I'm defending. Security is never perfect, because there's always this chance that something could get through your regulatory system. So you move from a kind of world of certain facts to ones of probability. And, that opens up a kind of different world of liability and law. And it may have relations to some of your other podcasts in that sense, because it starts to unsettle the certainty of the world a little bit.